Welcome to another Healthy Indoors Minute, everybody. I might look a little tired, and it's because we just had our third baby, and we had it in the hospital, which I'm at right now. And I just wanted to talk for a minute about how home performance is like having babies. One of the things that is a theme that we keep coming up against in all of our interviews in the season 2 of Home Diagnosis footage that I'm editing myself when I'm not living at the hospital, is that in the construction industry, we generally do things the way that have always been done. And I just want to say that that is not unique to the construction industry, and I would like to make an analogy out of having a baby. So there's this thing called the umbilical cord. It is connected to you where your belly button becomes what it is, right? And it is presented to the mother through this thing called the placenta. The placenta basically is a bag that's full of fluid and blood. And then it's connected to the baby, which if you look at it in one sense, which is a horrible way to look at it, but it is kind of interesting and true, a baby is kind of a meat sack full of fluid and blood. And so, if you have a baby the natural way, which is that it gets squeezed down through the birth canal, on the way out, the baby gets squeezed really hard, and a lot of the fluid, the like amniotic fluid that's in its lungs and in its nose and in its ears and stuff like that, gets squeezed out of the baby on the way out, which is very helpful. So that the baby is like not so juicy when it arrives into the world. Its weight is a little lower, so it'll gain weight faster, etc. But also, it squeezes a lot of the blood out of the baby, and it goes back up the umbilical cord into the placenta. And if you've ever seen a movie with a baby in it being born, you know that as soon as the baby comes out, what we do, not in movies, but also in real life, is clamp the umbilical cord and cut it, because we don't need that anymore. But what we just did is took 2 sacks full of blood. One of them we squeezed really hard, and then we immediately stopped them from equalizing. So your baby comes out, and it doesn't have a lot of blood in it. And then we don't let it get the blood back. Then we take the placenta that's full of blood and we throw that away. Weird and gross. And I just want to say that, like, that's an example of the medical industry, which a lot of people think is a science industry, which it is not. A lot of medicine is run by lawyers and business people. So they're not using science when they do something like that. And by the way, if you want to have your baby get as full of blood as it needs to so that the pressures equalize between the placenta and the baby, you have to specifically request that. It's called delayed cord clamping. And they're going to think that you're a pain in the ass for asking for it. Our baby did not come out the natural way. It came out via emergency C-section because it was laying sideways inside of Grace. If this was 150 years ago, or if we lived in the middle of nowhere, both my wife and my baby would now be dead. So thank God that there are places like this. And all nitpicking aside about the scientific validity of stuff, like, this is a miracle place. They're really good at fixing problems. One other thing that is interesting is that on the flip side, when you become somebody like me who tests homes for a living, a lot of people make this mistake of getting really buried in the data, in the diagnostic measurements, and the energy bills, and the heat flow and the vapor diffusion. My God, if you want to talk, get real nerdy, let's talk about like a woofy moisture transport analysis. And that is happening here to us because, of course, a baby, when they come out, they lose weight in the beginning because they haven't eaten anything. They just got disconnected from the mother. And also, my baby didn't get squeezed at all. He came out via C-section. And so he was 11 pounds, 2 ounces when he was born. Probably a lot of that was liquid that did not get squeezed out of him on the way out. And so his hearing is not what it should be yet. And it's because he's got fluid in his ears. He's lost some weight, which is fluid that's just not part of his body. It shouldn't be in there. And so we've got these people keep coming in, and as our third baby, Grace is highly researched in this stuff. She reads like crazy about birth and all that stuff. She should actually, she would make a great midwife. I hope she never does because the hours are terrible. But you can get bogged down in the data. We've got people coming in all day long, every hour or two, saying, when's the last time your baby pooped? What's the weight and the pulse and all this stuff? And it's just like a mountain of data. And sometimes we forget to just look at what we're trying to study and use our senses. And so the same thing goes in construction. If you just look around and you talk to the family that lives there, if there's no problems that they're experiencing, the house doesn't have problems. Like, houses are built, and homes multifamily buildings as well, should be built for people to live in. And so if you've got a frat house, those guys don't need a high performance house. They need a place that can be repaired easily. That's what they need. So you don't need to have great air quality. You don't have all that stuff. So again, we kind of you got to remember to use perspective, not get buried in the data, but also remember, don't do things the way that they've always been done just because that was the way that some man invented the way that we should, deliver babies in the 1800s, which is totally crazy. Also, let me just make the point that 40 weeks is a terrible number. It was based on one study that was done on 100 French women in the 1800s. So there's all kinds of ways that the scientific basis of the birth industry can be made better in a lot of the same way that the construction industry can be made better. Please do remember to subscribe to Healthy Indoors Magazine. We've got a new community that's started up that you can sign up for and interact with a lot of the experts in the indoor airspace across the world at that website, and I'm linking that below. Make sure that you comment, like, subscribe, have more babies if you want to. If you don't want to, don't have them. Tune in next time.